we will look at the integumentary system anatomy. The integumentary system anatomy. Okay, so the integumentary system is basically the body's outermost protective covering, consisting primarily of the skin and its associated structures, including the hair, the nails, the sweat glands, and then the sebaceous glands. Okay, most of the time when we hear of the integumentary system, a lot of people are thinking of only the skin. Okay, good. But the integumentary system goes beyond just the skin, even though the skin is more like the dominant organ of the integumentary system. Okay, so when we say the integumentary system, most of the structures within the integumentary system is the skin. Okay, but we have several other structures or associates that forms the integumentary system. Okay, so like I said, the hair, the nails, the sweat glands, and the sebaceous glands, all these organs are part of the integumentary system. Is that okay? In fact, the word there, integument, when we say integument simply means the complete covering of the body. So the complete covering of the body, we have the skin and then the appendages. They form the complete covering. If you look at your body, at a certain part of your body, it's not covered with skin. For example, check your fingers. At a certain point, it's not covered with skin. You have the nails there, which also forms part of the covering. Okay, that's what we mean by integument, the complete covering of the body. Okay, good. Now, the skin is very important. Very, very, very important because it serves as a barrier against environmental hazards. If not for the skin, our internal body organs would have been exposed directly to a lot of environmental hazards. Do you get it? The skin also it plays a role in regulating body temperature. We call that thermoregulation. The skin plays a role in thermoregulation through several processes. Is that okay? Someone will ask that. How is the skin able to how does the skin play a role in thermoregulation? Is that okay? Now, the skin helps in thermoregulation through several processes. One of them is sweating. Okay, we call it evaporative cooling. Sweating is also called evaporative cooling. Okay, so when your internal body temperature is very hot, is that okay? The sweat glands in the skin now begin to release sweat. Sweat is mostly water. Okay, as the sweat glands releases sweat onto the surface of the skin, the sweat evaporates. Is that okay? As the sweat is being evaporated, it cools the body by removing heat. As the sweat is evaporating, it is cooling the body by releasing heat. It's like the body is giving heat away. Do you get it? And this is under the control of the hypothalamus. Is that okay? It's under the control of the hypothalamus. Another process is what we call vasodilation and vasoconstriction. We have blood vessels within certain layers of the skin, especially the dermis. The dermis and the hypodermis. Within that layer, we have blood vessels there. Is that okay? When the body temperature is very hot, the environmental or atmospheric temperature is very hot, the blood vessels within the layers of the skin, they dilate. Okay, and as they dilate, it increases blood supply to the surface of the skin or the skin surface, and heat is then lost into the environment to get through that process. With the vasoconstriction, when the atmospheric temperature decreases, when the atmospheric temperature decreases, the blood vessels within the surface of the skin, they constrict. That is vasoconstriction. They constrict. And when they constrict, it reduces blood supply to the surface of the skin. And heat is lost. And that helps the body to retain a lot of warmth. Okay. Now, within some of the layers of the skin, if you check, look at this. Within the layers of the skin, look at this layer of the skin. Within the dermis, okay, we have a muscle there. We call it the erector pili muscle. You can see it's connected a little to the base of the hair follicle. Is that okay? Connected to the base of the hair follicle. There are tiny muscles at the base of the hair follicles. Okay. Now, anytime the atmospheric temperature is very cold, these erector pili muscles, they contract. When they contract, it's like they begin to pull on the base of the hair follicle. Okay, and as they pull on the base of the hair follicle, the hair shaft is stunned, or the hair will stand. Okay, and when that happens, that is what causes goosebumps. Okay, it's usually common when the atmospheric temperature is very cold. Okay, sometimes too it happens when you are you are suddenly suddenly sensitized. Do you get it? It can also pull on the hair follicles. Then we have another mechanism we call insulation, especially by the subcutaneous fats. The last layer of the skin, which is the hypodermis, the subcutaneous layer, we have a lot of fat over there, and fats serve as insulators. Is that okay? Good. They serve as insulators. Okay, good. So that tells you the skin helps in regulating body temperature. Okay, good. The skin also plays a role in sensory perception. We have a lot of sensory receptors especially in the dermis, and then the hypodermis layer of the skin. We have sensory receptors over there, which helps in picking signals from especially touch and other signals. Okay, the skin also plays a role in vitamin D synthesis. Is that okay? The skin plays a role in vitamin D synthesis. Okay, we have a substance in the epidermis layer of the skin. We call it's like a compound. We call it the dihydrocholesterol. It is located in the epidermis, specifically within the stratum basale of the epidermis, and also sometimes within the stratum spinosum layers. Okay, and this 7-dehydrocholesterol, it is a precursor for vitamin D synthesis. So anytime your body is exposed to the sunlight, is exposed to ultraviolet radiation or ultraviolet rays from the sun, okay, this dehydrocholesterol absorbs the energy from the ultraviolet radiation. It absorbs that energy and uses that energy to convert the dehydrocholesterol to pre-vitamin D3. It converts it into pre-vitamin D. Do you get it? Through a chemical reaction in the body. Okay. Then the pre-vitamin D within the body undergoes a process called thermal isomerization. Okay. And that process helps to change, okay, it into vitamin D3, which we call the cholecalciferol. Okay. Then it is transported into the bloodstream and then transported to the liver. Okay, then when it gets into the liver, the vitamin D3 is converted into calcidiol. Do you get it? That is the reason why if you go to the renal system too, as part of the functions of the kidney, you will be told that the kidney helps in the synthesis of vitamin D. This is the reason why. Is that okay? This is the reason why. So within the epidermis layer of the skin, okay, especially within the stratum basale and the stratum spinosum layers, there is a compound we call 7-dehydrocholesterol, which is a precursor for vitamin D synthesis. So when the skin is exposed to sunlight, this 7-dehydrocholesterol cholesterol absorbs the energy from the sunlight. It absorbs that energy and use that energy to convert the 7-dehydrocholesterol into a pre-vitamin D. Okay. Then this pre-vitamin D also undergoes chemical reaction. Okay. Good. So it undergoes chemical reaction. And in fact, this pre-vitamin D is more like It is changed by the skin through heat or through heat exposure into what we call vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is what we call cholecalciferol. And this cholecalciferol or vitamin D3 is transported via the bloodstream. It enters the bloodstream and it is transported to the liver. Okay. Then the liver will convert it into calcidol. Okay. And when it reaches the kidney, the calcidol is also converted into calcitrol. Okay. And the calcitrol is more like the active form of vitamin D itself. Okay. So the activation of the calcidol, which is inactive form of vitamin D, is actually done in the kidneys. Okay. And this is how vitamin D is synthesized. Very nice mechanism. Okay, good. So that tells you how important the skin is. Okay, now in anatomy, the skin is studied under gross and surface anatomy. Gross anatomy is like studying something with your physical eye. It's like mostly organs that you can see. Okay, organs that you can handle. Okay, unaided without using a microscope. Those organs, you study them gross anatomy. Okay. Surface anatomy is more like, it's also called topographical anatomy. Is that okay? So in surface anatomy, you are just studying something by observing. To get that surface anatomy, you are studying something just by observing the thing. Is that okay? So you can study the skin using gross anatomy or surface anatomy. Okay. Now, the branch of anatomy or medicine that specifically deals with the study of the skin structure, the functions of the skin, diseases affecting the skin is referred to as dermatology. So when we say dermatology, we are looking at a branch of medicine or anatomy that specifically focuses on the study of the skin structure, the functions of the skin, and diseases affecting the skin. That is dermatology. Okay. Now you need to understand that the skin is the most easily examined organ system in the body. You can easily examine the skin. Okay. You can just take someone and just be looking at the skin without even touching the person and be examining the skin. It's one of the organs that you can easily assess and you can easily examine. Okay, if someone is having rashes on the skin, on the body, you can just look at the person and just examine. Sometimes you may not even need to touch. Okay, but then it's also the most vulnerable organ system. Okay, because the skin is exposed to radiation, it is exposed to trauma, it is exposed to infection, and it is exposed to a lot of chemicals within the environment. Okay, now the integumentary system, which mostly is made up of the skin. Okay, which is mostly made up of the skin. Okay, as I said earlier, the integumentary system, which is mostly made up of the skin, is the largest organ system. In fact, it's the largest organ in the body, the largest organ system, covering the body's external surface. Okay, in adults, it spans about 1.5 to 2 square meters. Okay, 1.5 to 2 square meters. Is that okay? Good. And the shape is the skin, unlike other organs which have definite shape, like the heart. You can say one's heart is like the person's own fist. Another example is like the kidney is like a bean-shaped organ. The skin do not have a definite shape. Is that it usually adopts the contours of the body. You get it? Because the skin is continuous with the natural breaks, and it's also at a certain point, especially when you are about to enter the orifice, it merges with the mucous membranes within the internal organs. Okay, so the skin do not have a definite shape. Just that in terms of thickness, the thickness of the skin varies in certain areas. For example, if you look at the soles of your leg, the soles, and then if you look at your palms, you could see the skin at the layers of your palm is very thicker as compared to the skin in other parts of your body. And when you even check the skin at your eyelids, the skin covering your eyelids is very, very thin as compared to the other areas. Okay, good. So in terms of the weight of the skin, okay, the skin makes up about 15% of your total body weight. Okay, and it weighs averagely it weighs 4.5 to 5 kilogram in adults. Like I said, in terms of the thickness of the skin, the thickness ranges from 0.5 millimeters, especially in the eyelid. So it's very thin around the eyelids, and it's also very thick, 4 mm around the palms or soles. Okay, so that is basically it for the skin. Now let's look at the organs of the integumentary system. In anatomy, when we say a system, a group of organs coming together. Okay, so one question you should ask yourself is that, okay, what are the organs that forms the system? Okay, so the organs of the integumentary system, we have the skin, we have the hair, we have the nails, we have the sweat glands, we have the sebaceous glands, and we have the sensory receptors. We also have blood vessels and lymphatic vessels. These are all organs of the integumentary system. Okay, so we have the skin, which is an organ in the integumentary system. We have the hair, which is an organ in the integumentary system. The nails are also organs in the integumentary system. The sweat glands, the sebaceous glands, the sensory receptors, the blood vessels, which you can find in the dermis and the hypodermis of the skin, and then the lymphatic vessels, which are also in the dermis. Okay, these are the organs of the integumentary system. So if you are asked to mention some of the organs of the integumentary system, these are the organs. So the skin, the hair, the nails, the sweat glands, the sebaceous or oil glands, the sensory receptors, the blood vessels in the dermis and the hypodermis, the lymphatic vessels in the dermis. These are the organs of the integumentary system. So in fact, the organs of the integumentary system includes the skin and its associated structures. Okay, good. And the main organs of the integumentary system, we have the skin, the hair, the nails, the sweat glands, the sebaceous glands, the sensory receptors, the blood vessels, the lymphatic vessels. Okay, if you take the skin have other sub-layers. Okay, we have the outermost layer, which is the epidermis. We have the middle layer, which is the dermis. And then we have the deepest layer, which is the hypodermis, or what in some literatures they call subcutaneous tissue. Okay, so we have the epidermis, which is the outermost layer, the dermis, which is the middle layer, the hypodermis or the subcutaneous tissue, which is the deepest layer of the skin. Is that okay? Good. So now let's begin with the skin. Okay, like I said earlier, the skin is more like the dominant organ in the integumentary system. The chief organ in the integumentary system is the largest organ. In fact, is the largest organ. It covers a space of 1.5 to 2.0 meters square, and it accounts for 15% of our body weight. Okay, and like I said, the skin is very thick on the soles and the palms, but very thin as you get to areas like your eyelids. Okay, and one interesting thing you should note is that every 30 to 40 days you get new outer layer of skin. Okay, and it happens to be more like a gate to your eternal body health. For us to assess your eternal body health, we should go through the skin a lot of time. Is that okay? So it's like a gate or a window to your eternal body health. So more like the first line of defense. It's also the first line of defense. And like I said, the skin has 3 layers. The components of the skin or the layers of the skin is the same thing, either components of the skin or layers of the skin. It has 3 layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. These are the components of the skin. Or if you are asked what are the layers of the skin, or what are the 3 main layers of the skin, 3 main components of the skin: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. The epidermis, like I said earlier, is the outermost layer, mostly made up of epithelial tissues, or sometimes they call it the epithelial layer. And the dermis is the middle layer, mostly sometimes referred to as the connective tissue layer. Okay, and this layer, because this layer contains a lot of blood vessels, this layer helps in nourishing and also in sensation, because there are a lot of sensory receptors in that layer of the skin too. Then we have the hypodermis, or how we call the subcutaneous tissue. The hypodermis, or how we call the subcutaneous tissue, that is the deepest layer of the skin, and this layer helps to insulate and then anchor the body. Okay, it provides insulation because of the fat, okay, so that heat will not be lost. That is one of the functions of this layer. Okay, good. And it also serves as a covering for other internal structures. Okay, that layer of the skin, the hypodermis. Okay, so mostly you see the subcutaneous layer forming part of the outermost covering of other internal body structures or organs. Okay, that is why we say it insulates and anchors other organs. Is that okay? So these are the components of the skin, or the layers of the skin. Okay, generally you see the skin has 3 layers: the epidermis, the dermis, the hypodermis, and the subcutaneous layer. Okay, then we have, now let's look at the various layers of the skin. We are going to take the various layers of the skin one after the other and go deeper into it. So we will begin with the first layer, which is the epidermis. The epidermis. So in fact, the epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin that serves as the body's first line of defense against environmental threats. Is the outermost layer. Okay, the epidermis is the outermost layer of the skin. You see it like that. It has about 5 different layers. The epidermis that you are seeing as part of the 3 layers of the skin is also further divided or subdivided into 5 layers. That is very interesting. Okay, it's subdivided into 5 layers. The 5 layers, we have the stratum corneum, we have the stratum lucidum, the stratum granulosum, the stratum spinosum, and then the stratum basale or germinativum. Okay, these are the 5 layers of the epidermis. Is that okay? In fact, within the epidermis, we have several cells within the epidermis. Okay, we have a lot of cells within the epidermis. We have cells like keratinocytes, melanocytes, the Meckel cells or the tactile cells, and the dendritic cells or the Langerhans cells. These cells are all located within the epidermis. Okay, good. So if you look at this diagram, okay, you can see some of the cells. So within the epidermis, you can see we have several cells: melanocytes, keratinocytes, Langerhans cells, desmosome. Okay, these cells are also, you have the tactile epithelia or Meckel cells, the dendritic cells. Okay, these cells are all located within the epidermis. They are the primary cells within the epidermis. Okay, so the keratinocytes, you can see where the keratinocytes are. Okay, the keratinocytes, they are mostly found within the stratum spinosum. Okay, the keratinocytes. Okay, we have the melanocytes. The keratinocytes are the cells that produces keratin. And then we have the melanocytes. They produces the melanin. Is that okay? We have the Meckel cells. Okay, you can see the Meckel cells or tactile epithelial cells. And then we have the dendritic or Langerhans cells, which can also be found within the stratum spinosum. Is that okay? Good. Now, one thing you also have to remember about the epidermis is that it is avascular. Blood vessels do not reach the epidermis. Blood vessels do not reach the epidermis. Okay, but because the epidermis is connected to the dermis, blood vessel reaches the dermis. So it receives its nourishment from its relationship with the dermis. Okay, because it is connected. It is just closer to the dermis. The blood supply is via its relationship with the dermis. You get that is how it's able to get nutrients and nourishment because of its relationship with the dermis. Okay, good. So these are the layers of the epidermis. So you can be asked a question like, what are the layers of the epidermis from the inside? From the inside, you are going to start with the stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and stratum conium. That is from the inside. If you are also asked the layers of the epidermis from the innermost, you get it? From the outermost to the innermost. From the outermost to the innermost, that will be stratum conium, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. Okay, good. So these are the layers of the epidermis and the cells that are located within the layers. So like I said, the specialized cells within the epidermis, we have keratinocytes. Okay, they are the main cells within the epidermis. They produce keratin, and it's the keratin that helps to form the tough protective layer of the skin. Okay, we have the melanocytes. Melanocytes is located within the stratum basale. Look at the diagram. It's located within the stratum basale. Okay, they produce the melanin. Okay, and melanin plays a role, helps in forming, protecting against the ultraviolet radiation. Melanocytes. Okay, and the melanocyte also plays a role in your hair color determination. We will come to that later on. Okay, we have something we call hair color determination. When we get to hair, you see the other relevance of melanin, and you understand that we have different types of melanin, and that plays a role in your hair color determination. Is that okay? Then we have the dendritic cells, or what we call the Langerhans cells. The Langerhans cells are located within the stratum spinosum. The Langerhans cells. So you can be asked in exams where the cells are located. So like Langerhans cells, which part of the epidermis is it located? Is it the stratum spinosum or the stratum basale? Keratinocytes, where are they located? Okay, is it the stratum basale or the stratum spinosum? You get it? Very interesting questions like that. Okay, so now, like for example, the Langerhans cells, for example, they are found within the stratum spinosum. Okay, and these cells are immune cells that help to detect the presence, antigen. Do you get it? In the body, they are more like immune cells. The Langerhans cells are more like immune cells. We have the tactile epithelial cells. You can see from the other diagram on the left. These tactile epithelial cells are also called the Meckel cells. Okay, they are located within the basal layers, mostly the stratum basale. Okay, and these cells are connected to nerve endings. You can see the sensory nerve ending. You see it is connected to the tactile epithelial cells. They are connected to the nerve endings. They are also responsible for touch sensation within the epidermis. You get it? They are responsible for touch sensation. Is that okay? Good. Then we have the sensory nerve endings. You can see the sensory nerve ending also appears in the basal layer of the skin, and you can see it appears over there, the yellow thing over there that is connected to the tactile epithelial cell. That is the sensory nerve ending. Okay, it's also one of the specialized cells. Sensory nerves are cells. It's also one of the specialized cells in the epidermis. Okay, then we have the dendritic cells. Okay, the dendritic cells. Okay, the dendritic cells are also located within the stratum basale. Okay, they are also called the Langerhans cells. Okay, the dendritic cells, they are the Langerhans cells. Is that okay? So we have some of them in the stratum basale. Some of them too are also within the stratum spinosum. Is that okay? Good. But they are mostly found in the stratum spinosum. Okay, and they are more like immune cells. Is that okay? So you need to understand the distribution of the layers. Okay, and then the cells that are within these layers. Okay, Good. So that is it. So the specialized cells, we have keratinocytes that produces keratin that forms the tough protective layer of the epidermis. The melanocytes that produces melanin. It also plays a role in protecting your body against ultraviolet radiation. Okay, which is very, very important. Okay, that aspect is very, very important in anatomy. Okay, because you see, the skin protects the body from ultraviolet radiation primarily through melanin. Okay, so melanin is more like a pigment. It is produced by specialized cells, the melanocytes. Okay, it's like a pigment. So when melanin absorbs and scatter the ultraviolet rays, and it helps to reduce the amount of this ultraviolet rays from the sun that penetrates the deeper skin layers. You get it? And that is very important because it protects the DNA in the skin cells. You get it? It protects our body, the cells. It protects the body cells. Is that okay? Good. Now let's continue to the dermis. Let's move on to the dermis. So from the epidermis, the next layer of the skin is the dermis. The dermis is in fact the middle layer of the skin. It is found beneath or under the epidermis and above the hypodermis or above the subcutaneous layer. Okay, and like I said that the epidermis is avascular, but the dermis is vascular. Okay, it contains a lot of blood vessels, unlike the epidermis, and it supports the skin with strength and flexibility. Okay, you remember we mentioned that the epidermis has 5 layers, but the dermis have 2 layers. Is that okay? Now, even though you have to understand that even though the dermis have just 2 layers, the epidermis have 5 layers, but the dermis is very thicker. Okay, that layer is very thicker than the epidermis. So if you are asking exams that the dermis and the epidermis, which layer is very thick, is the dermis. The dermis, even though it has just 2 layers, but it is very thicker than the epidermis. Okay, so the 2 main layers of the dermis, we have the papillary layer, which is the upper layer, and then the reticular layer. Now, if I ask you in exams that which layer of the dermis is connected to the epidermis, is the papillary layer, the upper layer. Because from the papillary layer, you are now going to the stratum, okay, basale, okay, which is the basal layer of the epidermis, okay. So from the papillary layer is the first layer of the dermis. From the papillary layer, you are now coming to the first layer of the epidermis, okay. And which layer of the dermis is connected to the hypodermis or subcutaneous? That's the reticular layer. Okay, so the dermis has 2 main layers: the papillary layer, which is the uppermost layer or upper layer, and then the reticular layer, which is the deeper layer. Okay, so the dermis is basically the middle layer of the skin, found beneath the epidermis and above the subcutaneous layer. It contains blood vessels, unlike the epidermis, and it supports the skin with strength, flexibility. It helps us to feel sensations, regulates body temperature, fights infections, and supplies nutrients to the upper skin layers. Okay, now it is thicker than the epidermis and made up of collagen, elastic, and reticular fibers. Okay, understand that the dermis contains a lot of blood vessels within the dermis too. So look at it this way. See, you can see within the dermis, we even have the sweat glands. We have the sebaceous glands also within the dermis. So these are the sweat glands. This is the sweat gland. This is the sebaceous gland. Do you get it? And we have blood vessels. See, these are blood vessels. And the nerve endings even passes through the dermis. Is that okay? So the dermis it is thicker and made up of collagen, elastic, reticular fibers. You see, we have elastic fibers over here. We have collagen fibers. Okay, and we also have reticular fibers within the dermis. And like I said, the 2 main layers of the dermis is the papillary layer and then the reticular layer. The papillary layer is the uppermost layer of the dermis, and then the reticular layer is the the deepest layer or the deeper layer of the dermis. Okay, good. Now let's move on. The structures that are found in the dermis. Look at the diagram again. If you are asked that, what are the structures that are found in the dermis? Just look at the diagram. You can see the sweat gland, the sebaceous gland. Okay, the sweat gland, the sebaceous gland, the hair follicle also passes through the dermis. The blood vessels are also within the dermis. The nerve endings are also within the dermis. So blood vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles, sebaceous glands, erector pili muscles. Okay, we have a muscle that is connected. This muscle. You see this muscle, erector. Look at the muscle we call the erector pili muscle. You see, it's a muscle that is attached to the base of the hair follicle. Okay, the root of the hair follicle. And this muscle, this is the muscle that plays a role in goosebumps formation. Is that okay? Good. There's the muscle responsible for goosebumps. So anytime the body temperature is very cold or suddenly becomes cold, or anytime you are suddenly sensitized, do you get it? This erector pili muscle, because it's located at the base of the hair follicle, it's the root of the hair follicle. This muscle will contract. When it contracts or it vibrates. When it contracts or vibrates, because it's located close to the base of the root of the hair follicle, it pulls on it or it exerts pressure on it, and that causes the hair shaft, okay, or your hair to stand, especially those on the skin to stand. And when that happens, that is what we call goosebumps. Is that okay? Good. That also plays a role in temperature regulation or thermoregulation. Then we have the lymphatic vessels. You can see the lymphatic vessels there. Okay, the lymphatic vessels also within the dermis. Now let's look at the last layer of the skin called the hypodermis. Okay, like I said earlier, the hypodermis is also known as the subcutaneous layer or subcutaneous tissue. In fact, this layer is the deepest layer of the skin, and it is located beneath the dermis. Okay, it is located beneath the dermis and above the muscles or bone. Okay, so right from the hypodermis, you are entering into the muscles. You are moving into the muscles. Is that okay? Good. The hypodermis. Okay. In fact, this layer contains or it's made up of adipose tissues or fat cells, loose connective tissues, large blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves. Okay. So that should tell, and this is the layer that you have to target. Do you get it? When you are going to give intravenous medication, this is the layer that you have to target. Okay, because you see, in this layer, we have large blood vessels over there, larger blood vessels in that layer. Is that okay? So the hypodermis, also called the subcutaneous layer. Okay, that is the layer down. So you can see in the hypodermis, you can see the pattern of arrangement of the blood vessels in the hypodermis. It's going straight. Large blood vessels. Is that okay? But look at the nature of the blood vessels in the dermis. Okay, it's vertical, but in the hypodermis it's horizontal. Do you get it? And the blood vessels in the dermis is very small, very small. Okay, but in the hypodermis we have larger blood vessels as compared to the dermis where we have small blood vessels. We have larger blood vessels in the hypodermis, large blood vessels. Is that okay? So we have large blood vessels, connective tissues, lymphatic vessels, nerves, and adipose tissues or fat cells within the hypodermis. So within the hypodermis, we have adipose tissues or fat cells, we have loose connective tissues, we have large blood vessels, we have lymphatic vessels, and then we have nerve vessels. Is that okay? So this is the hypodermis. Is that okay? The function of the hypodermis, one of the functions of this layer of the skin is insulation and cushioning. Okay, it helps to absorb shock and protect deeper body structures, because it also serves as the outermost protective covering for some other organs, internal organs in the body. So it plays a role in shock absorption and protection of deeper organs. Okay, and one thing about fat is that fats help to store energy storage. Okay, fats help to conserve energy. That is one of the functions of fat. So the hypodermis helps in energy storage. Okay, and it's also a pathway for blood vessels to reach the dermis, and also for the dermis to also be able to nourish the epidermis. Okay, that is one of the relevance of the hypodermis. So if you are asking exams what are the composition of the hypodermis, we are basically asking you what structures can we find in the hypodermis. We have adipose tissues or fat cells. Is that okay? We have connective tissues, large blood vessels and lymphatic vessels, and then we have nerves. Okay, that is very clear from the diagram. Okay, adipose tissues, that stores energy and it also provides insulation. Okay, the loose connective tissues, that provides flexibility and anchoring. Okay, we have large blood vessels also within the hypodermis. Another name for hypodermis is the subcutaneous layer or subcutaneous tissue. Now, skin color determination, skin color, skin markings, what makes each skin unique? Okay, what makes your skin different from mine? Is that okay? What makes your skin different from mine? Okay, when we say the skin, we are talking about the three layers. We are talking about the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. Okay, the question here is that what makes each skin unique? Is that okay? What makes each skin unique? In fact, what makes our skin unique is what we call melanin. Okay, melanin is one of them. Okay, or how we call skin pigments. Okay, skin pigments. When we say skin pigments, skin pigments are more like natural substances in the skin that gives the skin its color. Okay, so when you hear skin pigments, they are like naturally occurring substances in the skin that gives it the color. A common example of melanin, a common example of a skin pigment is melanin, but we have several other types of skin pigments. Okay, good. One of the functions of the skin pigment is that skin pigments actually provide your skin color. That is what helps to determine your skin color. So if you are asking exams what helps in the determination of skin color, okay, the answer you should be looking for is skin pigment. Is that okay? It provides the skin color. Whether you are light, whether you are dark, all depends on the skin pigments. Okay, and they also protect against ultraviolet radiation. A common example of a skin pigment that protects our body from ultraviolet radiation is melanin. Is that okay? Now, another function of skin pigment is it assists in, it has an immune function. Okay, and if you even go to animals, okay, is the skin pigments, some animals have this camouflage features that their colors can turn to different colors. Do you get it? It's because of their skin pigments. Okay, it's because of they are able to do that because of their different skin pigments. Okay, now the major skin pigments or the major pigments in the human skin, we have melanin. Okay, the melanin, they are produced by what we call the melanocytes, which are the cells within the epidermis. Okay, they are produced by the melanocytes. And then we have, in fact, melanin is what determines the skin and hair color. Whether your color will be brown or it will be black. or whether your hair will be brown or will be black, all depends on melanin. Okay, we also have carotene. If you come to our part of the world, you realize that because of the sun exposure, we tend to have a lot of melanocytes. So our body tends to produce a lot of melanin. That's the reason why our color tends to be a bit darker. Do you get it? And sometimes for some people, brownish. Because of the melanin, we have a lot of melanin in our bodies because of the exposure to it. Because melanin helps to protect our body from ultraviolet radiation. Is that okay? From the damage from the ultraviolet. So the more you get to areas where you are exposed to ultraviolet radiation, the more your body is likely to produce a lot of melanin. And as it produces a lot of melanin, it changes your appearance. That's why if you come to our part of the world, we tend to be blacks. Do you get it? Good. Then we have carotene. Carotene is a precursor for vitamin A. Okay. You get carotene when you take in vegetables like carrots and they accumulate in the skin. They sort of give your skin this kind of a yellow-orange appearance. Okay, carotene. Okay, we also have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is also a pigment in the skin. Okay, good. Hemoglobin. Mostly hemoglobin is found in red blood cells and is very visible in people who are light skin. Okay, so if you look at people who are light skin, okay, you will notice that the areas around the place where their vessels are would appear reddish. That is also influencing the color of the skin. It's because of the pigment. Hemoglobin is also a pigment. Is that okay? Even though it's a pigment, but it helps in the transportation of oxygen in the blood. Okay. It also gives skin a pinkish tone. Is that okay? Good. Then that is the reason why if the hemoglobin, if let's say you are a white, usually you notice these things a lot in white colored individuals. If someone is white colored, okay, the whites, if you look at their skin, especially if they lose a lot of oxygen, they lack hemoglobin. If their hemoglobin levels goes down, mostly you notice that their skin may become, some areas of their body may become bluish discoloration. Is that okay? Bluish discoloration. That is what we call cyanosis. Okay. Mostly is because of deoxyhemoglobin. So if you have a lot of oxygen, a lot of hemoglobin, hemoglobin gives your skin that kind of red to pink appearance. But if you lack hemoglobin, that is when there is deoxyhemoglobin. That is low oxygen from hemoglobin. It makes your skin appear bluish to purple. Is that okay? And that is what we call cyanosis. Then we have bilirubin. Bilirubin is also a pigment in the skin. Okay. And mostly bilirubin is more like a byproduct of red blood cell breakdown. Okay, but it's not a good pigment. It's not a good skin pigment. Okay, because high levels, in fact, bilirubin will make your skin color appear yellowish. So high levels of this bilirubin is what we refer to as jaundice. Is that okay? But then we have the skin markings. So we have the skin markings and then we have the skin color. So the skin color is as a result of melanin, hemoglobin, and carotene. So like I said, with the hemoglobin, it's a pigment in the blood. Do you get it? And it plays a role in your skin color determination. How would you be able to know that? Do you know that mostly if you have a lot of hemoglobin, okay, if you are looking at the areas of your body, especially you see this in fair-colored individuals in our part of the world, in areas around your body where there are visible blood vessels, you see this reddish or pink coloration, indicating that you have a lot of hemoglobin. Okay, but if your body is lacking oxygen or hemoglobin level is very low, the areas around the vessels that are visible becomes bluish. That is what we call cyanosis. Do you get it? Becomes bluish. So hemoglobin is also one of the pigments, okay, within the blood. Then we even have bilirubin. Bilirubin is also a pigment. Bilirubin is a byproduct of red blood cell breakdown. It's also a pigment, but bilirubin will make your skin appear yellow. So the more bilirubin that you have, high levels of this bilirubin will cause jaundice. Your skin will become yellowish. We also have carotene. Carotene is a yellow pigment from food that we eat. For example, if you take in vegetables like carrots, egg yolks, okay, your skin will store it in the stratum corneum and then subcutaneous fats. Is that okay? Good. And carotene makes your skin looks yellow or orange. Okay, good. Now let's look at the skin markings. Skin markings, we have freckles. Freckles are more like, when we say freckles, they are more like flat melanized spots that increases with sun exposure. They increase with sun exposure. We have the moles or the nevi. Okay, they are the elevated patches of melanized skin, sometimes hairy, and it should be monitored for signs of cancer. Okay, moles or nevi. Then we have hemangiomas, which we call the birthmarks. Okay, they are also part of the skin markings. Okay, we have friction ridges. Friction ridges is what forms the basis of fingerprints. Okay, this is what we call friction ridges. This, if you look at your finger, you see there's small patterns. Do you get it? They form the basis of varying fingerprints. Is that okay? And in fact, it forms during fetal development, and it's very unique for every person. Every person have different friction ridge, and that is very wonderful. See the number of people in this world. Every individual have different friction ridge. That pattern that you see, small, every individual's own is different. The arrangement is different. Okay, and that is very wonderful. Then we have the flexion lines. Okay, flexion lines. This flexion lines are more like skin folds that are formed by repeated movements. Okay, so you see them over here, not inside. Okay, not inside. The one inside is called creases. The dark ones that you see inside your palm, they are the creases, finger creases. But the flexion lines are the ones that are at the back of your hand. You see some kind of skin folds, small skin folds that are formed because of the repeated movement, up and down movement of your hand. Some skin folds form, especially at the back of your palms. Okay, that is what we call the flexion lines. Okay, now let's look at the importance, the clinical significance of understanding the skin anatomy in burns. Okay, the clinical significance. Okay, understanding the skin anatomy is very important for you as a nurse or a midwife, for you to understand some conditions that affect the skin, conditions like burns. Is that okay? Conditions like burns. If you really understand the skin anatomy, you appreciate conditions like burn. Okay, so for example, if you tell you someone is having a first degree burn, mostly a first degree burn just affects the first layer of the skin, which is the epidermis. You get? And you should know that if someone is having a first degree burn, then that should tell you the person first degree burn do not affect blood vessels, because you don't have any blood vessels in the first layer of the skin, which is the epidermis. Do you get it? So if someone is having a first degree burn, at least if you understand the skin anatomy, it will help. Okay, second degree burn affects the epidermis and the dermis. So when we say someone is having a second degree burn, it will affect the epidermis and the dermis as well, the second degree burn. You get it? So its second degree burn involves the epidermis and also part of the dermis. Okay, then we have third degree burns. Third degree burns extends through the epidermis, the dermis, and also into the subcutaneous tissue. Okay, it extends through the epidermis, the dermis, and into the subcutaneous tissue. So if someone is having a third degree burn, it will affect the epidermis, the dermis, and the subcutaneous tissue. And your understanding of the skin anatomy will help you to appreciate the structures that will be damaged depending on the degree of burn. Okay, so if I tell you someone is having a burn affecting the dermis, you should know that, okay, in the dermis, what are some of the structures there? The sweat glands, the sebaceous gland, the hair follicles, erector pili muscles, blood vessels, nerve endings. So that will help you to know the kind of damage that will be caused. Do you get it? So it's very, very important. It's very, very important. Okay, if someone is having a third degree burn which is affecting the hypodermis or the subcutaneous tissue, it will help you to appreciate which structures, because in the subcutaneous tissue or the hypodermis, we have a lot of larger blood vessels in there. Large blood vessels are within the subcutaneous tissue or the subcutaneous layer. Okay, so understanding the integumentary system is very important to appreciate and understand burns. It's also very important in drug administration. Okay, very, very, very important in administration of drugs, because when we in administration of drugs, we have topical or dermal administration, meaning in topical administration you are targeting the surface of the skin. Okay, if you say a drug is dermal, topical, meaning you are targeting the epidermis, you are applying it on the epidermis. Is that okay? Good. If we say a drug you are administering a drug intradermal injection, mostly intradermal, you administer it into the dermis, that is 15 degrees. If you are administering a drug intradermal, you go 15 degrees and you administer it into the 15 degrees and you administer it into the dermis, just beneath the epidermis. If you say a drug, you are administering a drug subcutaneous injection. Subcutaneous. Where is it going to? It's going into the cutaneous layer, subcutaneous layer, or the fat layer. Okay, that's the subcutaneous injections. That's what we call the subcutaneous. So usually you go 45 degrees. Okay, so subcutaneous injection, you see, we are going into the subcutaneous layer. Is that okay? Subcutaneous layer. From the subcutaneous, you are going to the muscles. Do you get it? From the subcutaneous, you are going into the muscles, the muscle layer. Is that okay? And some drugs are also administered into the muscles, and those ones are what we call the routes, intramuscular routes. Is that okay? Intramuscular routes. So we have intramuscular. Usually, you deliver it into the muscles at an angle of 90 degrees. Okay, so if you are administering a medication intramuscular and the angle that you are giving is 45 degrees, you are not likely to reach with the nature of the needles that we have, you are not likely to reach the muscle layer. Is that okay? So if you are administering a drug intramuscular, you go straight 90 degrees. If you are administering it subcutaneous, you go about 45 degrees and you deliver it into the subcutaneous layer at an angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so you realize that the understanding the skin anatomy is very, very, very important for you to actually be able to administer some kind of medications. Okay, now understanding the skin anatomy would also help you to appreciate certain disease and their manifestation. We have a lot of systemic conditions that manifest within the integumentary system. For example, if someone is anemic, okay, and the person is not having enough oxygen, or enough oxygen is not reaching the tissues, or someone is having a condition where the hemoglobin carrying capacity of the blood reduces, the person usually experiences this presentation called cyanosis. Cyanosis is more like a bluish discoloration of the skin. Okay, if someone is having cyanosis, it's an indication that there is deoxyhemoglobin. Deoxyhemoglobin. Okay, which is also a pigment. You know, one of the pigments within the skin is deoxyhemoglobin. It's either you are having hemoglobin or deoxyhemoglobin. So if your hemoglobin levels is very low, deoxyhemoglobin forms. And that is what makes certain areas, especially mucous membranes or certain areas of your skin, become bluish in color. Is that okay? So cyanosis is one of the, if you understand the skin and some of the features in the skin, it will help you appreciate things like cyanosis. This is what we call cyanosis. Bluish discoloration of the skin. The first diagram on the left, the upper left, that is cyanosis. Is that okay? We have what we call erythema. Erythema has got to do with redness of the skin due to increased blood supply. Erythema, this one, erythema. The one here. Okay, the one here. 1, 2, 3. Uppermost. 1, 2, 3. Erythema. Okay. We have jaundice, yellowish discoloration. Because of, bilirubin is also a pigment, but it's not a good one. Okay, from red blood cell breakdown. When red blood cell breaks down, it produces a substance which is also a pigment, which can cause the pigment is something that can influence the color of your skin. That is a pigment. Is that okay? So jaundice is also, if you look at jaundice, yellowish discoloration of the skin. If you have high levels of bilirubin being formed, they are deposited within the layers of the skin, and that causes jaundice. Then we have another condition we call bronzing. Bronzing is like a golden brown skin appearance, which is often a sign of Addison's disease. Is that okay? This results from increased melanin or adenocorticotropic hormone related pigmentation, bronzing. In Addison's disease, this bronzing can occur in Addison's disease. Is that okay? Good. Then we have albinism. Albinism. Albinism is an inherited condition. People with albino, the problem is that there is absence of albino, means absence of melanin. Okay, melanin is what gives your skin the color. Okay, in people with albino, they don't have any melanin in their skin. Do you get it? And that is what makes them have the skin color that they have. Okay, then we have bruising. Okay, this is what we call bruising. Yeah, bruising. The last one is what we call the bronzing. You see, the skin has become very brownish. Yes, that is what we call bronzing. Understanding the skin anatomy is also very important for you to understand conditions like pressure sore or decubitus ulcers. Another word for pressure sore is decubitus ulcers. Okay, pressure sore or decubitus ulcers. Okay, so it will help you to know the layers of the skin that this pressure sore has affected, whether it's the epidermis, the dermis, and sometimes a pressure sore can be so serious that it can even affect the hypodermis. Okay, good. It can help you to understand conditions like psoriasis, which also primarily affects the epidermis. It can help you to understand conditions like eczema, which we also call atopic dermatitis. Okay, conditions like vitiligo, which affect the stratum basale of the epidermis, especially the melanocytes. Okay, in this condition, there is autoimmune destruction of the melanocyte that leads to loss of melanin. Is that okay? So you realize that understanding the skin anatomy is very, very important to you as a nurse. Now let's look at the hair. The next organ of the integumentary system is the hair. In fact, the hair is also known as pili. It's a slender thread-like structure made up of keratinized cells. The hair grows from an oblique tube in the skin called a hair follicle. Okay, and it is composed mainly of hard keratin, which makes it tougher than the soft keratin found in the skin. Okay, this hard keratin is densely packed and strengthened by disulfide bonds, making hair resilient to physical stress. Hair covers most parts of the body, but is absent from certain areas such as the palms, the soles, the lips, the nipples, the sides of the fingers and toes. Portions of the external genitalia too are without hair. Okay, now understand that the scalp, if you take the scalp of human hair, we have about 100,000 individual hairs, and that plays a role in heat retention and protection from ultraviolet rays. Okay, if you take men with beards, typically adult men with beards, typically they have about 30,000 hairs. Okay, individual hairs, especially prominent after, and beards are very prominent after puberty. Okay, good. Now, although hair density per square centimeter, example 55 to 70 hairs on the limbs, okay, is relatively consistent among individual sexes. If you take males and females, you realize that the hair density, the distribution of hairs on their skin, like their limbs, is relatively different. There are some ladies who don't have any hair on their limbs. The upper limbs and their hands. Some have hair on their lower limbs, some do not have. It's relatively different, and all that is because of the differences in hormones. Okay, good. Now, hair is non-living tissue once it exits the skin surface, which is why cutting it causes no pain. Okay, the hair is a non-living tissue. That's the reason why if you cut hair, when you are cutting hair, you usually do not experience pain as compared to, let's say we are cutting your skin itself. You see, when you are shaving, you usually do not experience any pain. So it's a non-living tissue. It's not a tissue that contains life. Do you get it? That's why we say it's a non-living tissue. But other tissues contains life. For example, that's why if you are cutting your skin itself, you feel massive pain. Yeah, but if you are shaving, you don't feel any pain. That's why people can easily shave and they don't feel any pain, because it's a non-living tissue. Okay, but if you try to cut the roots of the hair, you feel pain because the roots, there is life there. Okay, if you try to cut and pull off, that's why if someone is pulling your skin, you feel, if you try to pull someone's skin, it's very painful because under the skin itself, there is life there. You get it? The root of the hair follicle, the root of the hair is living. Do you get it? Good, because it is nourished by blood vessels. Okay, so we have several types of hair. We have the lanugo hair, the vellus hair, the terminal hair, and then we have the terminal hair. Okay, now with the lanugo hair is a fine, downy, unpigmented hair on fetuses in the last trimester, and it is mostly shed before birth. Okay, in fact, the lanugo hair, you mostly you will mostly notice it on the skin of newborn babies, and sometimes it is widely distributed all over their body, more like fine, downy, unpigmented hair on fetuses, and sometimes at birth you notice them on their skin, but at a certain point they all disappear. Then we have the vellus hair. It's a fine pale hair replacing the lanugo hair. It covers most of children's bodies, 2/3 of adult women, and then that is what we call the vellus hair. That's what is in the middle, the vellus hair. Okay, the vellus hair. It looks pale and it replaces the lanugo. It covers children's bodies, 2/3 of adult women. Then we have the terminal hair. That is the normal one, like the one on your scalp, especially at your age, the hair that you have, that's the terminal hair. Do you get it? That's the coarse, long, pigmented, very, very pigmented. Do you get it? Good. That is what we call the terminal hair, found on the scalp, the eyebrows, the lashes, and it replaces the vellus in pubic, axillary, and facial areas at puberty, especially in males. Then we have what we call the structures of the hair and the follicle. Now let's look at the structure of the human hair and then the follicle. Now, you know, the hair zones, the zones of the hair, if you are looking at the hair longitudinally, we have the bulb, the roots, the shafts, the hair matrix. And if you are looking at it cross-sectional, we have the medulla, the cortex, and the cuticle. Okay, the cross-sectional is the one on your right, immediate right, the outer. So we have the medulla, the cortex. Okay, we have the medulla, the cortex, and the cuticle. But if you are looking at it cross-sectional, we have the bulb of the hair. Okay, good. That is the base, the origin of the hair, where we have the dermal papilla, which is connected to the blood vessel. We have the roots. Okay, we have the hair roots. You get it? The bulb is more like, you know, the base or the origin of the hair. And that includes the dermal, which is connected to the blood vessels. Okay, we have the roots of the hair. That is the portion within the hair follicle itself. And then we have the shaft, which is the visible parts above the skin. The visible parts of the hair above the skin. That is the shaft. Okay, then we have the hair matrix. Okay, the hair matrix. The hair matrix is the growth zone at the base of the bulb where the cells divide to produce new hair. That is where cell division occurs. It's because of the hair matrix. That is where the division, that's more like the growth zone where cell division takes place to produce new hair or for new hair to form within the hair matrix. Okay, then we have the cross-sectional layers. The cross-sectional layers, if you look at the hair cross-sectionally, that is, we have the hair like this and we are looking into it. We have the medulla, which is in the middle. Okay, the central zone, okay, made up of cells plus air. Okay, then we have the cortex, which is the thick, tightly packed keratinized cells within the pigments. Okay, then we have the cuticle, okay, which is the outer layer of flat, overlapping cells like roof shingles. Okay, that is the cross-sectional. Now let's look at hair color. Hair color and hair color determination. Hair color and hair color determination. Okay, understand that your hair color is primarily determined by the type and amount of melanin pigment produced in the hair follicle. Your hair color is primarily determined by the type and amount of melanin. Okay, so for your hair to be black or brown, it depends on the amount of melanin that you have. Okay, or the amount of melanin pigment that is produced within your hair follicle. Within your hair follicles, we have melanin. Okay, look at it. Within your hair follicles, we have melanin within your hair follicle. So this is the hair follicle. You see, we have pigmented hair. We have gray hair. Gray hair, it means there are no pigments in the hair follicle. Okay, if you look at a pigmented hair, the color of the hair depends on the melanin pigment. You get it? So we have two types of melanin pigment. We have eumelanin and then we have eumelanin. Eumelanin, usually if someone is having eumelanin, that pigment within the hair follicle, the person will have brown to black color. The hair color will be brown to black. But if someone is having few melanin, the hair color would be red to brown. Okay, the hair color will be like red to golden brown color. Okay, so you see some people, their hair color is very black. It tells you that the melanin pigment within their hair follicle is eumelanin. Eumelanin. Okay, if someone is having brown hair, it tells you that. And mostly if someone is having their skin color is, the hair color is brown, it tells you that the melanin pigment within their hair follicle is the eumelanin. Because if you have melanin pigment within your hair follicle, your hair color would appear brown or black. Is that okay? And that is the most common pigment in the human hair follicle. Okay, so if you have high levels of eumelanin, your hair color would be black. And if you have moderate levels, your hair color will be brown. So you meet some people and it's like their hair color is brown. It tells you that the melanin pigment within their hair follicle is eumelanin, but the levels are moderate. Okay. And if you meet someone and the hair color is red, it tells you that the melanin pigment within their hair follicle is pheomelanin. Because if pheomelanin pigment is within your hair follicle, your hair would appear red. And if you have pheomelanin pigment alone within your hair follicle and it's moderate, your hair color will appear yellow. Okay? But if you have pheomelanin and it's more, your hair color will look red. Okay? In color. Okay, and that should tell you if someone is having, someone's hair color is red, it should tell you the person is having low levels of eumelanin and high levels of pheomelanin in the hair follicle. That's the meaning. Is that okay? But then if someone is having gray or white hair, it means that the melanin pigment, and you see as you age, the melanocyte cells, the cells that produce the melanin pigments, they die off. That's why some people at a certain point, you see gray color. Their hair become gray. It's because of absence of the melanin. Okay, absence of melanin in the hair follicle. So if your hair become gray means absence of melanin. It means you don't have any melanin pigment within your hair follicle. Then the hair color will be gray. If you have some part of your body and you are growing gray color, it means that within the hair follicles over there are no melanin pigments. Do you get it? And you see, this is the science that those who do dyeing or those who produce chemicals that are able to dye the hair, this is the science that they use. Okay, this is the science that they use. So if your hair follicle, if your hair is black, we want to dye it to white. It means that the dye that we must produce, we will produce a dye that will go and suppress, the effects of eumelanin. If your hair color is very dark, we have to first of all give you a dye that will suppress the manifestation of the eumelanin, because it's the eumelanin that makes your hair color black. Okay, so we would give you a dye that will take away the eumelanin and that will make your hair color white. That's the science that these who produce the dyes they use. Okay, so if we want to dye your hair, let's say red, we will first of all have to dye your hair white. Okay, in dyeing your hair white, we are taking the eumelanin away before we now put in the pheomelanin. Do you get it? Because the pheomelanin will make your hair color appear red. So it's just a science. That science is the science that they use in hair dye. So that is the hair dye science. Okay, then we now move on to the next organ that we call the nails. Nails are also called keratinized plates. Okay, nails are also called keratinized plates. Is that okay? Nails, they are also called keratinized plates. They are clear, hard structures made up of specialized cells called oncocytes, onychocytes. Okay, onychocytes. And in terms of their location, the nails are located at the tip of your fingers and toes. Okay, so at the tip of your fingers and toes, that is where you are going to see your nails. Okay, it also has parts. You see, we have the free margin, the nail plates, the lunula cuticle. You see the free margin, the nail plates, the lunula cuticle. Okay, we have the free margin. We have the hyponychium. That is usually if you shave the nail for it to meet the levels of the finger. Okay, that margin is what we call the hyponychium, the level that meets the contours of the finger end. That is the hyponychium. Then we have the nail bed, okay, which is the innermost itself, and then we have the matrix of the nails. Okay, so we have the free margin. So if the nails grow, that space that you see is like the part that has crossed the real finger body. That is the free margin. Okay, good. Then we have the nail plates. We have the lunula. We have the cuticle. Lunula is more like the base, and then the cuticle is like the very end of the nail. Is that okay? Good. So nails are the human equivalent of an animal claw. Okay, some animals have claws, they have horns, and they have hooves. It's like human equivalent of those features in animals. Okay, the fingers grow about 1 millimeters per week, faster than the toenails. Okay, and toenails also grow faster due to reduced blood circulation and less frequent trauma or use compared to fingers. Now, new nails are produced in the nail matrix by a process called mitosis, located under the proximal nail fold. Okay, good. So now let's look at the anatomical structure of the nail. So like I said, we have the free edge. The free edge is also what we call the free margin. It's the same as the free edge. That is the distal part of the nail that extends beyond the fingertip. That's the fingertip. So the distal part of the nail that extends beyond the fingertip. And that is the part that we usually trim. If you are trimming your nails, that is the part that's the free edge that you usually trim. We have the hyponychium. The hyponychium, that's the thick skin beneath the free edge that protects the nail bed from infection. That is the hyponychium. Okay, then we have nail plate. The nail plate is the hard visible part of the nail made up of dead keratinized cells that protects the finger tip. We have the nail groove. Okay, the nail groove is like the lateral indentations where the nails meet the skin. The natural indentations where the nails meet the skin. We have the nail walls, the fold of the skin overlapping the sides of the nail, guiding its shape and direction. That is the nail wall. We have the nail bed. Okay, the nail bed is the skin beneath the nail plates that supports and nourishes the nail as it grows. And then we have the nail matrix. The nail matrix is located under the base of the nail, the groove center where new nails are produced. That's the nail matrix. Then we have the mantle of the nail. The mantle In fact, the nail travels deeper. The mantle is the deep fold of the skin that protects the mattress. That is the mantle. Is that okay? That is the mantle of the nail. Then we have the cuticle, which we call the eponychium. That is a thin layer of skin that seals the area between the nail plate and the skin to prevent infection. That's what we call the eponychium. Okay. Then we have the lunula, the visible part of the mattress appearing as a pale crescent-shaped area at the base of the nail. That is what we call the lunula of the nail. Okay, so you can see that the visible part of the mattress. Okay, good. Now let's look at the reasons why you need to understand the nails, the clinical significance of the nails anatomy. Okay, the nails protects the fingertips and toes from injury. Okay, that is one of the significance of the nails. It also supports the fingers, enhancing the sensitivity and its ability to perform motor tasks. Okay, and as human beings, we use the nails for scratching. It's like a tool that we use for scratching sometimes. And scratching, we use it for scratching. And sometimes we can use our nails to manipulate small objects sometimes. Okay, we have a condition that we call koilonychia. Koilonychia is when the nails become concave. It's like it forms something like a bow. It becomes concave, and you can even put something inside. And it's very common among patients with iron deficiency disease, and it reflects a problem with hemoglobin synthesis. Okay, so if you lack oxygen or your hemoglobin levels goes down, oxygen delivery to the nail tissues reduces, and that affects the formation of the nails. That is what causes koilonychia. We have another condition we call clubbing. Clubbing is when the nails become rounded. Okay, the nails become rounded, and it's a sign of chronic hypoxemia, low levels of oxygen in the blood. And mostly it's very common in congenital heart defects. Okay, very, very common. And it's because it happens as a result of an increased blood flow and tissue growth at the fingertips in response to long-term oxygen deprivation. Okay, now nails and their grooves can trap dirt and bacteria, requiring a thorough cleaning to prevent infections, and then especially in clinical or sterile settings. Okay, good. Now we will now move on to the cutaneous glands. Okay, I mentioned that apart from these structures that we have, the skin, the nails, the hair, we have what we call cutaneous glands. Okay, cutaneous glands. Cutaneous glands are also part of the skin. Okay, cutaneous glands are more like specialized exocrine glands that are found in the dermis of the skin. In fact, these glands actually originate from the epithelial tissue and release their secretion either onto the skin surface or into the hair follicles through that. And they play critical roles in thermoregulation. They play critical roles in lubrication, protection, and sensory signaling. Okay. In fact, cutaneous glands develop from the epidermis, but they settle in the dermis or the hypodermis. There are 5 major types of cutaneous glands. We have the merocrine glands, or what we call the ecrine, or what we call sweat glands. We have the apocrine glands, or apocrine sweat glands. We have the sebaceous oil or sebaceous or oil glands. We have the ceruminous or earwax glands. We have the mammary or milk glands. These glands actually contribute to body temperature regulation through sweating, protection against pathogens via antimicrobial secretions, skin and hair hydration through oily secretions, pheromonal communication via scent producing apocrine glands, and infant nourishment through mammary gland lactation during lactation. Okay, so these are the types of cutaneous glands. So you look at the types of the cutaneous glands and their functions. Okay, these are the main types of cutaneous glands. So we have the merocrine glands. So let's look at the diagram over here. The merocrine glands. These are the most numerous and widely distributed glands, especially abundant on the palms, the soles, and the forehead. Okay, they are the merocrine or the eccrine sweat glands. Okay, each is actually a simple tubular gland with a coiled secretory portion deep in the dermis or hypodermis and a duct that open directly to the skin surface. They secrete watery, protein-free sweat, mostly 99% water with salt and waste products, which cools the body via evaporation. We also have the apocrine sweat glands. Okay, they are often found in the axilla, the areola, the pubic, the beard areas. These glands become active at puberty. Okay, mostly their ducts open into the hair follicles. They produce thicker, milky secretion rich in fat through odorless. Though it is odorless when secreted, this sweat can produce body odor. Okay, after bacterial breakdown. Then we have the sebaceous glands. So let's look at this diagram. So these are the sebaceous glands. These are some of the glands, the sebaceous glands. Okay, good. And then you can see from your immediate right, we have the ceruminous glands. They are located in the external ear canal. And these are modified, they are more like modified apocrine glands that secrete the cerumen. You know, we have cerumen that is secreted in there. That cerumen is what we call the earwax. Is this ceruminous glands that secrete? It's like a modified apocrine gland within the ear canal. Is that okay? And it is a sticky mixture of sebum, dead skin cells, and other substances. So cerumen actually moisturizes the ear canal. It traps debris and has an antimicrobial properties that helps to protect your auditory system. Okay, then we have the mammary glands. You know the mammary gland is part of the integumentary system. The mammary glands. Okay, the mammary glands. They are also modified apocrine glands found within the female breast. Okay, and it develops functionally only during pregnancy and lactation. Okay, so unlike the regular sweat glands, the mammary glands produce milk. Okay, which is a complex fluid rich in proteins, fats, immune factors, essential for infants' development. Is that okay? So these are the glands. So you see, we have the sebaceous gland. Okay, we have the eccrine sweat gland. So you can see the sebaceous gland where it's located, closer to the hair follicle, the sebaceous gland. We have the eccrine sweat gland. That is what we call the merocrine glands. Eccrine sweat glands. They are the merocrine glands. Okay, then we have the apocrine sweat glands. The apocrine sweat glands. Is that okay? The apocrine sweat glands are found in the axilla, the areola, the pubic, the beard areas. In fact, these glands become active at puberty. They are that open into the hair follicles. They are connected to the hair follicles. They are the apocrine sweat glands. Okay, so you can see where they are located. The apocrine sweat glands. You can see their ducts are connected. They are the blue ones. You can see their ducts are connected to the hair follicles. Okay, so we have the sweat glands. We have two. We have the merocrine sweat glands or the eccrine sweat glands. Okay, which are the widely distributed, and in fact they are very abundant in the palms, the soles, the forehead. Okay, good. And that is what sort of helps to um helps to you know the role it plays is that it helps in secreting this watery protein free sweat, okay, which is mostly about 99% of water with salt and waste products, which cools the body via evaporation. They are widely distributed throughout the body. And we have the apocrine sweat glands, okay. These glands are thought to function in sexual signaling through what we call pheromones. Is that okay? Pheromones. Good. Then we have the sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands. Okay, the sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands, you can see it from the diagram. You know, the sebaceous glands are the flask-shaped holocrine glands that are closely associated with the hair follicles. Okay, they produce sebum or oily mixture that lubricates and waterproofs the skin and hair to inhibit bacterial growth. Okay, and mostly overactive sebaceous gland can contribute to acne in adolescents. Okay, in adolescents. Then we have the cereminous glands. Like I said earlier, the cereminous glands are located in the ear canal, the entry into the ear canal. They are more like modified apocrine glands that secrete the cerumen. Okay, cerumen is also called earwax. Is that okay? Which is a sticky mixture made up of composed of sebum, dead skin cells, and other substances. This cerumen moisturizes the ear canal and traps debris. Okay, and it also has an antimicrobial property that helps it to protect the auditory system. Then we have the mammary glands. Okay, we have the mammary glands, which is there. The mammary gland is also a modified apocrine gland found in the female breast. Okay, in the female breast. And especially for the midwives, you'd learn a lot about the mammary glands. In fact, when we get to the reproductive system, we would also talk about this same gland. So it's a gland within, because it is found within the layers of the skin. That is why we are classifying it as part of the organs or the glands within the integumentary system. Okay, cutaneous glands. So when we say cutaneous glands, we are talking about glands that are associated with the integumentary system. They are closer to the integumentary system. So they are parts of the organs of the integumentary system. So we have 5 major cutaneous glands: the merocrine glands or eccrine sweat glands, the apocrine sweat glands, the sebaceous glands, the cereminous or earwax glands, and then the mammary glands. Okay, and these glands play a role in body temperature regulation, sweating, protection against pathogens via antimicrobial secretions, skin and hair hydration through oily secretions, pheromonal communication via scent-producing apocrine glands, infant nourishment through mammary gland and lactation. Okay, then we have sensory receptors in the skin. Sensory receptors in the skin. You know, within the skin, we have sensory receptors in the skin. You know, the skin contains specialized sensory receptors that allows it to detect and respond to changes in our environment. In fact, these receptors are embedded at various levels of the epidermis and the dermis, and they respond to touch, they respond to pressure, they respond to pain, they respond to changes in body temperature, and then they also respond to vibration. Is that okay? So we have free nerve endings. These are some of the sensory receptors. We have the free nerve endings, which detect pain signals. They are the ones that we call the nociceptors. Okay. We have the Meckel or tactile discs. We have the Meissner's corpuscles. We have the Pacini corpuscles. Okay, and then we have the Ruffini endings. All these sensory receptors are found in layers of the skin. Okay, so we have the Meckel or tactile disc here, which is also a sensory receptor. We have the rufinine. This one, the rufinine endings detect skin stretch and then helps proprioception, located in deep dermis. It's located within the deep dermis. This one, you see, it's located in the dermis area. This is the dermis. Okay. Then we have the Pacini corpuscles. They respond to deep pressure and vibration. It's also located in the deep dermis. Here is it. And then we have the Meissner's corpuscle. They sense fine touch and texture, found in the dermal papillae. Okay, this one. Okay, they are also found in the dermal papillae. And then we have the Michael disc. The Michael disc. Yeah. They detect light touch. They are also located in the stratum basale of the epidermis. Okay, you see where they are located in the stratum basale or the basal layer of the epidermis. Then we have the free nerve endings. They detect pain, and we call them the nociceptors. Okay, they are found throughout the epidermis. Okay, then lastly, we have the nerve supply to the so the sensory receptors in the skin, like I was saying, we have the free nerve endings, the Michael or tactile disc, the Meissner's corpuscle, the Pacini corpuscles, and then the refinine endings. So like I said, you can see on your immediate right, we have the Meissner's corpuscles, or the Michael disc or the tactile disc. They are located within the basal layer, the stratum basale of the epidermis. Okay, the stratum basale of the epidermis. Is that okay? And they detect light touch. They are located in the stratum basale. They detect light touched. Okay, good. We also have the Meissner corpuscle, or the Meissner's corpuscle. Okay, they are also located. The Meissner's corpuscles are also located in the just at the boundary between the basal layer and then the papillary layer of the dermis. But mostly, most books, they will tell you they are located in the dermal papilla or the papillary layer of the dermis. Is that okay? Good. And they are responsible for fine touch and texture. Okay, you mostly find them very active within the fingers and then the toes, and also within the lips. Okay, the Meissner corpuscle. Okay, they sense fine touch and texture. They are found within the dermal layer, especially in the fingertips and then the lips. Okay, then we have the Pacini corpuscles. The Pacini corpuscles respond to deep pressure and vibration. They are located in the deeper in the dermis and then the hypodermis. The Pacini corpuscles. You see, they are located in the deeper dermis, so the reticular layer of the dermis. Then we have the rufinine endings. They actually detect stretch. Okay, they also detect heat. Is that okay? Good. The rufinine endings. Okay, so these are all different kinds of sensory receptors. In an exams, you can be asked to, with a well-labeled diagram. Okay, with a well-labeled diagram, explain the sensory receptors in the skin, or describe sensory receptors in the skin, indicating their functions. Is that okay? So you should be able to know that, in fact, most of these sensory receptors are within the dermal layer of the skin. So like the rufinine endings, they are found within the dermal layer of the skin. Like the Pacini corpuscles are for detecting vibration. They are also found within the reticular layer of the dermis. Then we have the Michael disc, or the tactile disc. It detects touch. It detects pressure, located within the stratum basale of the epidermis. Is that okay? So you should be able to draw and then describe the sensory receptors in the skin. Very simple. Then lastly, we will look at the nerve supply to the skin. The skin is richly supplied with sensory afferent and autonomic efferent nerve fibers. The afferent nerves carry sensation, touch, pain, heat from the skin to the central nervous system. And then the efferent autonomic fibers control the sweat glands activity, the blood vessel diameter, what we call polyerection, what we call the goosebumps. That's what we call polyerection. Pillow erection, pillow erection, goosebumps via the erector pili muscles. Then we have the we have two main plexuses. Okay, the nerve supply, we have two main plexuses. The subpapillary plexus, which supplies the superficial dermis and then the epidermis. We have the cutaneous plexus, located at the dermal hypodermal junction, supplying hair follicles glands and then the deeper dermal structures. Okay, good. So basically, in fact, the integumentary system, the function, nutrient and oxygen delivery, waste removal, thermoregulation through vasodilation, and then vasoconstriction. So this is basically the integumentary system. These are some references that you can use for further studies. Okay, thank you so much for your time.